So I'm sure several of you are saying, big title, right? Can't you evict the President of the United States from the White House? I agree with you. It does sound like a big title. It sounds like something your buddy asks you after the fourth bourbon when the conversation's gone completely off the rails at your local bar, because the normal answer would be an emphatic no. The president isn't renting the Lincoln Ballroom on Zillow. Until a ruling comes out. A ruling that goes against everything you would normally expect. You know, this isn't someone collecting the first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit at the inauguration anymore. Because the federal appeals court used two words yesterday that I would never expect it to be used against the President of the United States of America. Two words that President Trump absolutely, positively did not appreciate. That's a gross understatement. The court said each president is a temporary tenant. That is the actual language from the federal appellate opinion. And Trump effectively responded, oh, hell no. Now, before somebody clips the next 30 seconds and announces that I said federal marshals are arriving with an eviction notice because I know some of these keyboard warriors out there, no. This is not landlord-tenant law. Trump cannot suddenly be evicted because someone found cigarette burns in the Oval Office carpet. That was under the Kennedy administration and the Clinton administration. With a cigar. Sorry. The judges were talking about something much bigger, actually. Who ultimately controls the White House? The president? The Congress? The courts? The federal bureaucracy? The Muppet government? Oh, I'll explain what I mean by that. And when you combine that question with everything else happening in Washington right now, today's show looks less like the United States government and more like the Muppets Take Manhattan Constitutional Crisis Edition. And by the time we're finished today, your tinfoil hat-wearing neighbor may no longer look like the craziest man on the block. He may have simply been early. But we're going to go to earn our way back to that courtroom. Because first, I would like everyone to observe a touching moment of solidarity in professional sports.
After careful consideration and reviewing the current eligibility guidelines, I am officially declaring myself a WNBA prospect. If simply declaring who you are is all that's required, then I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA.
Wow, former NBA player Enes Kanter Freedom has declared himself a prospect for the 2027 WNBA draft. Yes, you heard me correctly. 6'10", former NBA player. WNBA, a political stunt aimed at an argument over transgender participation in women's athletics. Not the WNBA announcing that Kanter is actually eligible, but he's testing the boundary, which somehow makes this actually even funnier. Because he apparently decided enough press conferences, enough arguments. So let's test the theory, shall we? And before the ink was dry on the little grenade, former NBA player, by the way, Royce White, announced that he too is going to get on the act. Now, folks, I actually respect this. My position on sports is very uncomplicated. Women's sports exist for a reason. Male and female bodies develop differently, particularly after puberty. And athletic organizations have spent generations building women's divisions precisely because meaningful physiological differences exist. You want everyone protected from harassment? Absolutely. But protecting women's competition also means being willing to define what women's competition actually is. And apparently, these players decided the easiest way to have that conversation was, cool, draft me. But what say you? Put in the comments below. Because to me, I actually appreciate watching professional athletes finally taking a stand. Also, want to give a special shout out to the sponsor of this video, which is Noble Gold Investments. Have you been to lisahavengold.com? You know, the midterms are coming. The midterms are coming, and financial markets hate one thing above all: uncertainty. And the next few months, well, they're guaranteed to be full of it now, aren't they? We broadcast on it every day. But here's the good news. There's a simple way to protect what you've built. Gold. Physical gold. And silver hedge the volatility ahead. Noble Gold Investments has helped Americans protect their wealth for over a decade. Simple, easy, safe. You know what's even easier? All you have to do is call 877-646-5347. That's 877-646-5347. Or simply go to that address on the screen, lisahavengold.com. And what's even better right now is they have a very special offer. It's America's 250th. And Noble Gold's celebrating it by sending you a free 10-ounce U.S. independent silver bar when you open a new qualified account. Just mention Lisa's name Just say Lisa Haven, and they'll take care of the rest, but you have to mention her name. Remember, there's always a risk to investing. No guarantees, but if anyone can see you through it, that's noble gold. Election day is coming. Don't let it arrive without a plan. And remember, there's more information in the description box below. But now, let's get back to this video. All right, folks. Back to the Muppet Circus. The Save America Act would establish documentary proof of citizenship required for federal voter registration. You know all the rules. I'm not going to repeat it. If you don't know by now, go back and watch the 57 videos we've both done on it. But this is a pretty clean-cut lie. The majority of Americans want this through. Period. But it appears those on Capitol Hill don't seem to want to get it through. Period. I'm not going to give all the qualifying arguments around it because, frankly, I'm sick of hearing them. But if you have anyone in your orbit who still seems to not agree with getting this through, just ask him one simple question. Do you support Ilhan Omar? Because at a town hall, Omar said she believed the SAVE Act would disenfranchise people and said opponents had, fortunately for them, partnered in the Senate. Basically saying, thank you, John Thune, for being on my side.
And we do have, fortunately, partners in the Senate that are bipartisan, that are advocating for the bill not to be passed.
Hey, Johnny boy, thank you so much for allowing Ilhan Omar the opportunity to say that you're a partner with her. You know, that clip's going to live forever, and I hope your opponent uses it against you when they campaign against you, because frankly, you deserve it. Politically, Republicans supporting the bill just received an advertisement that they couldn't have scripted even if Steven Spielberg directed it. Need a reason to call your senator? Roll Ilhan Omar. This is getting to be the most ludicrous stalling campaign I have ever seen. 16 Republican state attorney generals have thrown their weight behind the bush, arguing that the election provisions are necessary to strengthen voter confidence. But if you need even more fuel to the fire, enter Kamala Harris.
Then this president is trying to push this SAVE Act, which basically would require that for people to register to vote, you're going to have proof of who you are through a passport, which a lot of Americans don't have, or a birth certificate. Same point, obstacles.
A little bit of misrepresentation there. Passport and birth certificate. Great. That is somewhat what the legislation does, but you missed the other forms of ID. Great job there, Kamala. Your misrepresentation and your fear factor isn't necessarily accurate now, is it? Wonder what the push against is all about. I don't think I need to say any more. Those two clips alone, if that doesn't push any naysayers against this, I don't know what will. But of course, our Senate decided it was more important to adjourn until September 14th without getting the Save America Act across the finish line. So they hung their little clock on the door, said, you know, we've gone fishing, be back after summer. Because, you know, it's just your representation of we the people that never seems to make a difference. Because apparently, you know, nothing more important's happening. Just the freedom of our country. At least Hillary Clinton's still working. You know, speaking about the future of Washington and Washington's permanent furniture, Hillary Clinton's back. In a recent Pivot podcast, someone asked what a future Democratic administration should do. Her answer included an extraordinary warning about holdovers from the Trump administration. Because Thune, again, and the Republican majority, if you think they're going to stall like you're stalling, you'd be dead wrong. You're the only ones who are going to drag your feet, because the minute they get back into power, well, let's just, here.
Clean up, fix things. You know,
yeah, they'll spend a lot of
so much to fix. I mean, first, get rid of all of the holdovers. Do not let anybody hang around in some small office somewhere who can literally subvert your program, and you don't even know that person's there. And I will predict that, Trump and his minions are going to try to,
Put people.
they're going to try to move people from political appointments to so-called civil service appointments, although they're trying to destroy the civil service. So people are going to have to be really searching.
Put people. Freaky. Clinton said a future Democratic president needed to remove holdovers and warned against leaving someone sitting in some obscure government office, just like the left did, who could subvert the new administration's program. So, excuse me, Hillary. Just run that by the class one more time, right? Because for approximately 10 years, anyone who suggested that entrenched people inside federal agencies might undermine an elected president was escorted directly to the internet's conspiracy theory department. A tinfoil hat was added to their head. They were called bunker dwellers, and they were handed freeze-dried beef stroganoff, a ham radio, and probably had 38 cases of water and called everybody brother, right? But when you provide the warning to a future Democratic president, and say, be careful, people buried inside the bureaucracy might sabotage what you're trying to do, well, I guess Uncle Earl from the bunker just leaned back in his lawn chair and said, hey, folks, you see? That's what I've been trying to tell you people. Now, is that proof of a literal Muppet shadow government? No, of course not. Political appointees, career civil servants, holdovers, and fights over presidential control of the bureaucracy are real and complicated parts of American government. But rhetorically, holy crap. Unfreaking real. If your goal was to pour premium unleaded gasoline on the deep state argument, Hillary just backed up the tanker truck fuel of freaking diesel fuel. So I need some sanity quickly before we transition into the TENANT argument. So enter Judge Justice Alito. Fortunately, one branch of government isn't changing one particular seat anytime soon. Justice Samuel Alito, now 76, has just put an end to, at least temporarily, any retirement speculation. Asked about another Supreme Court term, Alito's answer was essentially, yep, unfortunately for all of you that want me gone, I am staying. Reuters reporting, Alito says he'll remain in the court for at least another term, meaning the speculation that Trump might get another Supreme Court appointment from Alito's retirement goes back into the freezer. So Justice Alito apparently looked at everything happening in Washington and said, you know what? Maybe I don't leave you folks unsupervised. Katanya Brown Jackson. Probably wise because of everything I've reported on over the last year. But with all of this happening, we need this to happen. Wired drops this story. One of those headlines clearly engineered to cause someone's blood pressure medication to fail. DHS is hiring bounty hunters. Yes, bounty hunters. Boba Fett working immigration enforcement now. I'm sorry, folks. Sometimes I read the headlines in the morning at 3 a.m. and it does wake me up and also make me want to go straight back to bed. Strip away the headline and here's what Wired actually reports. Customs and Border Protection is seeking private investigators to locate some deported migrants abroad, including Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras, and document addresses as part of an effort including civil immigration fines and payment recovery. Wired calls those contractors bounty hunters. That's Wired's characterization, not the government's job title, mind you. And that's precisely how these narratives work, right? Government, tracing and payment recovery contractors. Media, bounty hunters are hunting immigrants around the planet. Congratulations, folks. Everyone is angry before paragraph 2. Then, the Wall Street Journal, because I'm just showing you how the media manipulates everything before I show you the media manipulating everything. Wall Street Journal reports that Trump is increasingly frustrated with Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin, citing disagreements over immigration tactics and various public comments, while also reporting there were no immediate plans to fire him. So apparently, even inside Trump's own administration, the immigration machine isn't running without friction, according to Wall Street Journal, which is supposed to be news, although they had the highest recorded numbers ever. Do you see what the mainstream media is attempting to do here in this news cycle? Which tells you there must be something larger happening behind the scenes, right? Maybe there was a leak. Maybe the prior administration had done something that they didn't really want out. Maybe there was a leak that they didn't want the story to be noticed. Maybe there was a former Air Force secretary that maybe leaked classified information, potentially. The Pentagon has revoked former Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall's eligibility for classified access in sensitive positions. The Pentagon alleges Kendall disclosed sensitive details involving the capabilities of the newly upgraded Air Force One. Kendall denies leaking classified information and says he is mystified by the decision. The last sentence, of course, matters. This is an allegation by the Pentagon, not a criminal conviction, not something we should report as established fact. But you understand why the allegation matters, don't you? This isn't someone leaking the White House lunch menu. We're talking about the aircraft that carries the President of the United States of America. And based on what's happened to the President of the United States of America over years, you can understand why that's so damn sensitive. So while the media cycle is screaming about private investigators locating deportees overseas, the Pentagon is simultaneously saying we believe sensitive information about our Air Force One got out. And that's is where today's collection of seemingly unrelated insanity begins coming together. We have women's sports, citizenship, career bureaucracy, Supreme Court power, DHS, national security, who gets to run the executive branch, whom gets to tell whom to do what. Because now we arrive at the building sitting at the center of the entire American executive government, the White House. And apparently we need to ask the question I never thought we would need to ask. You ready for it? President Trump wants his White House ballroom. Unless you've been living in Earl's bunker, Uncle Earl's bunker, and honestly, Uncle Earl's bunker is looking pretty good right now, you know this project has turned into a gigantic legal battle. The proposed project involves a roughly 90,000 square foot ballroom replacing the demolished East Wing with private funding playing a major role in the financing. An historic preservation organization suit. A federal district court stopped major portions of construction. The administration appealed. And yesterday, the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit said no. 2 judges in the majority affirmed the modified preliminary injunction. Judge Neomi Rao dissented. There's your dissenting opinion. And right near the beginning of the majority opinion are the words that launched this entire episode. Each president is a temporary tenant, not the owner of the White House and its executive residence. Temporary tenant. Ladies and gentlemen, somewhere in Washington, D.C., a property management company just started calculating Trump's security deposit. Because if there is a tenant, that would mean there would have to be a landlord of the White House. Could you imagine a checkout inspection? Mr. President, we've noticed you've removed the East Wing. Trump. It was like that when I got there. Security deposit's gone. Absolutely gone, Mr. President. Now, again, they're not saying President Trump is literally a tenant under rental law. For all you keyboard warriors, they're saying the White House belongs to the United States and that Congress exercises constitutional authority over federal property. There is your technicalities. The majority pointed specifically to the Constitution's property clause in federal law requiring congressional authorization before structures are erected on federal public grounds in Washington. That's the real constitutional issue. And frankly, it can be kind of fascinating if you're a constitutional geek like me, because it goes directly to separation of powers, which I actually enjoy. Trump's side argues this is the executive residence. The president traditionally manages and improves it. And this project includes serious national security improvements, including the drone port up on top. The majority says you can make the national security argument, but Congress hasn't handed the executive branch unlimited authority to radically reconstruct federal property. And the court emphasized that its decision wasn't a judgment about whether a ballroom is a good idea. It's about who has the authority to authorize it. Interesting. That distinction is absolutely critical to this argument. Now, the dissent. And this is where things get really fun, actually, because the dissent did a great job. Because Judge Neomi Rao didn't simply disagree. She fired a freaking cannon into the middle of it. Her dissent argues that the National Trust lacks standing, that the ballroom is likely within presidential authority to make improvements to the executive residence, and that the injunction improperly interferes with government security interest. She characterizes what the majority upheld as judicial overreach. Boom. Now we got ourselves an actual constitutional fight, and this is why we're only one jersey, not Republican, not Democrat, only jersey of the Constitution, because this is the part that gets fun, because this is really all that matters. Not some MSNBC versus Fox food fight. One side says Congress controls federal property. The dissent says, no. The court shouldn't be micromanaging the president's executive residence this way, particularly when national security is involved. You got that? This is exactly what the Supreme Court exists to resolve. Not which politician hurt your feelings. Not which cable news panel wins Twitter today or X today. Where does one branch's power end and another branch's power begin? And Trump says, I'm going to take it there. Oh, he comes out. I'm going to go to the Supreme Court. After the decision, Trump attacked the ruling as politically motivated, argued it threatens national security work, objected strongly to the TENANT characterization, and said he would immediately seek Supreme Court review. And you know what, folks? He's not wrong in his argument. Absolutely not wrong. I have it somewhere. There you go. And here's the biggest procedural detail. The appeals court itself stayed its ruling for 14 days specifically to allow the administration to seek Supreme Court review. Translation, this isn't over. Not even remotely. I know. It's a bigger fight than most people realize. Can they actually evict him? Keyboard warriors? I'll answer our opening question. Can this ruling be used to evict Donald Trump from the White House? President Trump? Of course not. If you actually think that, come on, get on my show. Let's argue a little bit more about your short-sightedness. The phrase temporary tenant does not transform the president into a leasee. But the fact that the court used it, well, that causes a bigger question in my mind. Because it gives Uncle Earl all the talking points for the argument he's been making for years, doesn't it? Who's the landlord? There is no presidential rental agreement. There is no landlord, allegedly, until you put those words in a ruling. Because there can be no eviction proceeding. And your HOA can't foreclose on the Rose Garden because Trump put the wrong color shutters on the residence. The majority was expressing a constitutional concept. A president temporarily occupying the White House. He doesn't personally own it. The building belongs to the country. And a majority concluded that Congress retains the relevant federal property authority over major construction. But if you're asking whether those two words are politically explosive, oh, hell yes. That was ridiculous to put in there. Because temporary tenant strips the majesty out of the presidency in a way almost nobody expected to see written in a federal appellate opinion. It was politically motivated, in my humble opinion, obviously. And from Trump's perspective, he's saying, wait one damn minute. I'm the elected president of the great republic of the United States of America. You just called me a temporary tenant. I'm responsible for securing this facility and the continental United States of America. I'm responsible for the people living and working not only in that building, but Washington, D.C. And you're calling me a damn tenant? That's why that's bigger than a ballroom argument now, isn't it? And yes, I do get passionate over it. And now you understand why Trump is passionate over it. Just look at everything we discussed, right? Kanter testing the definition of eligibility in women's sports, a passionate argument. Congress fighting over the definition of verification of citizenship for voter registration, the very constitutional meaning. The passion in that. Hillary Clinton warning future Democratic administrations about people embedded inside the government who might undermine their agenda while mocking people who said the same thing just years ago, calling them tinfoil hat-wearing freaks. Passion in that. Alito saying he's going to stay at the Supreme Court to protect passion in that. The Pentagon alleging sensitive Air Force One information may have been disclosed by a former secretary. And now federal judges are fighting over who controls changes to the physical White House itself. The Muppets take over D.C., huh? See how important this is? This is about power. Who possesses it? Who checks it? Who exceeded it? And who gets the final word when everybody claims the Constitution is on their side? Congress says, we write the law. The president says, I run the executive branch. The court says, we determine what those powers mean when they collide. And the bureaucracy says, we'll circle back sometime in September because we're out fishing. There's your Muppet Show. And that's why this temporary tenant language matters. Not because President Trump is getting evicted. He's not. Not because some judge suddenly owns the White House. They don't. It matters because one of the most powerful courts in America just drew a line around presidential authority. And the President of the United States of America says that line was drawn in the wrong damn place. Now it's heading to the Supreme Court and potentially towards a showdown over one of the strangest constitutional questions of Trump's second presidency. Who gets to decide what the president can build at the president's damn house? Congress, the president, the courts? Because apparently the answer, whose house is it? Is now, because it just changed, we'll let 9 justices get back to you on that. Until next time, remember, the Constitution doesn't care what jersey you wear. Power should always be questioned. Authority should always have limits. And if your tinfoil hat neighbor knocks on the door today, maybe you don't laugh at him. Ask him what else he's heard, because it appears he was far ahead of everyone else. And if you're wearing that tinfoil hat, congratulations. The last 24 hours just proved you right. I love you all. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. On behalf of Lisa Haven, Justice Knight, signing out.